Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today I have a review for you of Morningstar by Pierce Brown, which is the final book in the initial Red Rising trilogy. So, over the last few months I have been reading the Red Rising books starting in January with... You okay, Gus Gus? Cat's going a bit mental, almost knocked over the microphone. I'm going to leave that in the edit. Why not? So, and that when I drop the book. So, Morningstar is the third Red Rising book. Where do we find our characters when we get to Morningstar? So, I am going to spoil the first two books, but nothing about Morningstar will be spoiled in this book. I may try and hook up with somebody and do a Red Rising trilogy spoiler cast. Because I think it'd be fun to have some spoiler discussions. However, this video completely spoiler free for Morningstar. So, we find Darrow at the beginning of this book betrayed. He has been revealed as a Red to the Gold Society. He has been betrayed and he's been imprisoned by his greatest enemy, the Jackal. The Jackal, twin brother of the love of his life, Mustang, who also had his hand cut off by Darrow in the Institute at the beginning of the series. And essentially, the Jackal took that personally. So he spends a year torturing Darrow in... he spends a year torturing Darrow in before the start of this book, and then through some intricate plans, Darrow is freed from the Jackal's clutches, and the rest of the story of this book is about kind of finishing what he started in Golden Sun by transitioning fully from being a Red pretending to be a Gold to being a Red with the power of a Gold at the head of the army of the Sons of Ares versus the forces of the Sovereign, Octavia Alloon, who runs the society in which the Reds and other coloured races are oppressed. So, let's talk a little bit about characters. I think the major characters in this book, Darrow, Mustang, and Severo, and then I guess Victra and the Jackal. All of these characters are really well treated in this book. I think we don't get enough page time with the Jackal, I have to say. Mustang's entire story hinges on something that's revealed right at the end of the book. And I think that through most of the book, I was thinking, going like, what's going on with Mustang? There's something going on with her. And it was kind of more annoying than intriguing until I got to the end. I think on a reread, Morningstar would be a bit more satisfying. The Darrow is treated very well in this book. He gets a lot more emotional depth than we've had from him before. We also see him kind of re-examine his reasons and his motivations for trying to bring down the society. We also see him re-examining his relationship with Io and her motivations and kind of... There's very much a line of thought from Darrow that's like, well, what did she think I could do? I was just a guy. And while her death kind of catapults Darrow from being just a guy into being the guy, she had no idea that would take place, that, you know, those connections were in place, that was even possible. So... very interesting to see Darrow finally kind of re-examine his initial motivation and his reasons for taking on the society. In Golden Sun, we see his relationships with Golds and how that is kind of tainted by his past as a Red. There's actually a fantastic line in Morning Star, which without the context spoils nothing. But there's a scene where he's talking to another to the gold, and Darrow says, "I used to think greys were tall," and I think that really illustrates the perspective shift from Darrow the Red in kind of this fumbling around in this massive gold body to Darrow by the time we reach book 3, who really is a gold in everything but, you know, the memory of his early childhood. And, you know, he was a red until he was like, I think, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 or something. And he's been a gold now for 6 full years. So I think that the thing that you have here with with him now being more, I would say, a gold with red sympathies, it's just interesting. I think it's something that I would like to see Pierce Brown explore in the sequel series, which is currently at 5 books, and all of those books are like double the length of Red Rising. So I've got to imagine he's going to cover it all. Severo also gets some really good stuff in this book. Severo and Victra in particular are kind of linked together. A lot of good stuff happens between the two of them, with the two of them, as kind of Severo is like Darrow's backup. He's always got Darrow's back, no matter what Darrow really wants to do. But then we have Victra, who is like this incredibly honourable person who, you know, in her moments where she thinks she's dying in Golden Sun, the one thing she wants Darrow to know is that she didn't betray him, which I thought was very, very moving moment in Golden Sun. Obviously, she doesn't die because she's a major character in Morning Star, and you find that out basically straight away, like within a chapter. But I think she's given a really good shift by Morning Star. Similar with Severo. I think they both just have great... they get a really great turn. I think the situation you find Severo in at the beginning of the book is a really interesting twist on his relationship with Darrow, where, you know, Severo is used to being the follower, and then he's kind of asked to step up and become the leader, and then Darrow comes back into his life, and it's a really interesting dynamic for the two of them, and the way that it works out, I think, is also really well done. So the other thing I was going to say is story-wise and plotting-wise is probably the place that I feel this is the most let down. So around the middle of the book, I was never going to DNF this book because I'm 3 books into a 7-book series of which I own 5. No, I own 6 books out of 7, and I was on the 3rd out of 7. I was going to finish reading this series, but there was a moment in the middle of the book. So they go to an icy environment. That's all I'll say. For those of you who've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. And that sequence I found to be not particularly interesting. And on top of that sequence is also, in the grand scheme of things, when you read the whole book, completely unnecessary. And there's also a section where they go and speak to the Moon Lords, which again is kind of completely unnecessary. I think that one of the things that we lose in this book is that kind of... we almost lose the feeling of the scrappy underdogs. So Darrow and his crew could have been that kind of scrappy group of underdog rebels. You know, we're looking at like maybe the heist crew in the Final Empire, the first Mistborn book, or, you know, like the central characters in Star Wars, where they're part of this kind of small revolutionary force. And what we end up getting is that they just kind of recruit all these allies so that they can go, so they can go toe to toe with their enemy on an equal footing with these massive armies. And then that kind of makes no difference and doesn't really amount to anything in the plot. So all in all, I feel like this book probably could have been like 100 pages shorter, or maybe not 100 pages, but you could have cut out. I did enjoy the stuff with the Moon Lords, but you could have genuinely cut out a lot of this book, and maybe it would have been a bit more dynamic and a bit more interesting, and we could have seen the dichotomy of this kind of small insurrection revolutionary force versus this larger unstoppable army. But Pierce Brown doesn't give you that. He gives you kind of army building, then army versus army, and that's fine. It just wasn't as interesting to me as the alternative. So yeah, I think that that's probably the thing that lets it down the most, is that that kind of, those plot elements are not particularly interesting to me. Mileage may vary. I've spoken to people who say that Morningstar is their favourite book in the Red Rising trilogy, but those minor, they are minor complaints. I enjoyed the whole book, aside from, I would say, maybe some sections that are a bit dragged in the icy bit, but I did enjoy the whole book, apart from the small sections that dragged. And I ended out on this one out of 4-star. I did actually get that 5-star feeling at the end. So for the ending, I thought the ending was really well done. I really enjoyed it. However, for me, the middle of the book dragged down that 5-star feeling to the point where I felt it was a 4-star book. But that has given me an entire trilogy of 4-star books. So all 4 I gave 4 stars. I think Golden Sun's probably the best. I don't think I had any big complaints about Golden Sun. And originally I did give it 5 stars. And then on reflection, I was like, I think I need a little bit more to give me that to give me a 5-star for this book. So I did re-rate it when I was rating Morningstar. Maybe that's dishonest of me. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, at the time, maybe I felt 5 stars. I think that now on reflection, 4 seems pretty accurate and pretty fair for the book. Should you read this trilogy? In a word, yes. In a slightly longer description, while there are some pretty hefty trigger warnings for book 1, I would say look up if you are the kind of person who is or who can be triggered by events into kind of traumatic feelings, that sort of thing. So I would say look them up. Book 1, they are very, very prevalent. That's not as much of a thing for books 2 and 3. But I think that the ending is very good for this trilogy. It leaves us in a very, very interesting place for the sequel series, as a lot of the things that Darrow wants to accomplish are done, but there's kind of dangling threads for these sequel books. So very interested to see how Pierce Brown handles those when we get to Iron Gold, which is the first book in the sequel trilogy. I do own the whole sequel quadrilogy. I do own all 3 released books. I have 2 physically and 1 on Kindle, and I will likely buy the Lightbringer paperback when it's out, so that I've got a matching paperback set. Although I don't know, I might not keep these books. I might pass them on. So who knows? Anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed this book. Really enjoyed this series, despite, as I said, a lull in the middle of the book. But I really liked how the world building in Morningstar, we got to see a lot more of the other colours. We spent time with silvers, with greens, with yellows. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of Orion, who I really enjoyed from the previous book, but she's kind of barely in this one. there's one character that there's kind of a couple of major character deaths that are given a lot of time and a lot of screen time, and those both work well. Essentially, no complaints. There doesn't feel like there are any like name out of the hat deaths in this book. The other big criticism actually that I have, speaking of deaths, is that there is a fake out death in this book that Darrow's inner monologue lies to you about as the reader, which is dumb. A lot of people pointed this out before I'd read the book. They mentioned that, you know, Darrow's inner monologue lies to the reader, and there's a couple of scenes in previous books where this happens, but I think that the Morningstar one is the one that is the most egregious. The other thing I will say is, because I knew about that before reading it, it actually made it very, very obvious when it was happening. There's a couple of clues that it's going to happen, one before the death and one after the death, that it is a fake out death, and that did kind of ruin the impact of that death for me. Anyway, this was a good book, this is a good series, and I would recommend that, as long as you're okay with the trigger warnings for book one, that you give this one a read. So, have you read Morningstar? Have you read the Red Rising series? Would you like to see a full spoiler discussion of the trilogy? Let me know what you think, and I would love to have you subscribe to the channel so that you can see the Iron Gold review when I start reading that. My current plan is probably to read another series between now and starting Iron Gold. Or maybe I'll just start a couple of other series. I haven't really thought it through, to be honest. I'm not reading Iron Gold in March. Might read it in April, possibly reading it in May. It'll absolutely depend on how I'm feeling when I'm building those TBRs. So, thanks so much for watching. As I said, please do subscribe. Please like the video if you've liked it. Let me know in the comments if you've read the book and you've got comments or thoughts. Please no future spoilers for the next books in the series. And of course, please do subscribe to the channel. And I will speak to you tomorrow. Wait, don't go yet. I'm doing a charity drive for BCHC, the Birmingham Community Healthcare Charity. They are a charity attached to the Birmingham's kind of National Health Service, and what they do is they raise money for small little things that can help support patients and the families of patients, things like books, toys, toiletries. Also, they do big projects, like they have funded the creation of a playground for children with prosthetic limbs. Now, if you would like to support this charity, you can go to the link in the description for this video and donate some money to my charity appeal. I'd be really grateful if you do so. This is an absolutely fantastic charity. While they aren't local to me, the charity drive is run by a friend of mine, Stace, and I don't know about you, but I'm going to be reading as many books as possible in March anyway, so might as well use that to raise some money for a good cause. Please donate to the link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.